Order. If you would please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, who's singing the anthem today? Volunteers? Nobody? All right. We do have a quorum. Director Farmer is not here today, but the rest of the board is, which gives us a quorum. Mr. Carmel.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. This is a continued public hearing to consider a special tax ballot measure that would fund 3 full-time firefighters. It would be placed on the June 5th direct primary statewide election ballot. At the conclusion of the public hearing on Monday, the board directed staff to return with an alternative proposal that would impose the tax solely on improved parcels of real property within the district. So staff did some recalculations and first of all came up with the fully burdened amount of that tax to fund 3 firefighters would cost $378,025 annually. There are 3,929 improved parcels within the district, so the tax per parcel annually would be $96.21 if it's imposed on improved parcels of real property. Additionally, we found that there were 6,082 total parcels within the district, so if the tax is imposed on all parcels, the amount of the tax would be $62.15. In your packet, you have 2 sets of resolutions and ordinances. One that addresses only improved parcels, one that addresses all parcels. So at this point, we'd like you to deliberate. First of all, open the public hearing, take testimony, deliberate, and then decide how you want to proceed. One other issue needs to be addressed, and we briefly touched upon it last time. The argument in favor of the ballot measure would be due at the county on the 28th of February, pretty short time frame, which means likely it would have to be on the February 22nd regular meeting agenda. So you may also want to discuss, and we recommend that you do discuss, A, whether you want to prepare a supporting argument that would go on the ballot, and if so, who is going to prepare that? It could be any one of you, it could be 2 of you, a very short ad hoc, and of course, you can seek the input from Chief Hollingsworth or anyone with expertise. There's a nice set of recitals that would be, I think, a good starting point. But that's the other issue that we'd like you to address and provide some direction on. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam President, and we'd be glad to answer any questions. Rudy Hernandez, our finance officer, is here to address any financial issues, and I'd be glad to answer any legal questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
You just said that we have to have the argument at the county at February 20th, and then it would...
28th.
28th. That's what I heard, 20. Thank you. That makes more sense. Are there questions from the board? And we'll take questions, and then we'll do public comment, and then we'll bring it back to the board for board discussion. Vice President Berenger.
I really don't have any questions. I really wanted to thank staff and legal for, in a few days, coming up with all of these words. And actually, even though there was some discussion from the public as to what we should have done a couple of days ago, I think this is an improved product. We have better options. There is a question, though. The old number was $300,000. Now it's $360-some thousand. And I believe that if this ballot does pass, it has to be spent on that. So if there are excess funds, do we have to then have the firefighter at the highest level to start with? Or can we use excess funds float from year to year to allow additional funds to be applied to a higher grade of a firefighter? Can you help explain that to me, please?
The proceeds of the tax can only be used to fund 3 full-time firefighters. That's the parameters. If there's excess, it's carried over. It's placed into a special restricted fund in which it can only be used for that purpose.
So following on that question, so if it's these specific positions, so and positions at this rank, or these specific, I'm just trying to get, like, if there were extra, could we use it to help pay for a fourth, not an additional, but one of the other firefighters that we have in the department?
No. You're
Okay.
really hemmed in by
So
the
it would be
specific wording
restricted
of the
to
measure.
those to 3 positions. Question 2, is it restricted to is it restricted so that it's for the 3 positions for full-time career firefighter in addition to the 2? So if we change the staffing level so that we had 2 career firefighters like we did before the SAFER grant, we could use the funding to pay for 3 of the ones instead of the 3 additional. I'm not saying that we would do this. I just want to know if it's only for the additional firefighter versus the ones we already have.
The wording we've used is 3 full-time firefighters.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Well, let me clarify that. 3 full-time firefighters doesn't mean 3 new ones.
No, it means 3 full-time firefighters. The additional staffing that we have now, that's what it's intended to address. So in theory, that's what it's going to be used for.
In
and
theory.
only that.
Now, let's say we drop down to 2. We're still funding 3 full-time firefighters.
No, you would have to place that money in a fund, and if you didn't have enough funds to cover it, you'd probably have to reach into your general fund to cover the difference.
Maybe it's a semantics. Do we want to restrict ourselves to that use?
Well, that's the direction that we originally got, so you'll have to ask yourselves that question. Remember, the genesis of this was the SAFER firefighters. We got the benefit of a grant for 2 years for 3 additional firefighters. The idea here is to continue those 3 firefighter positions to allow 4-person staff on an engine in perpetuity.
To allow but not necessitate 4 people, correct?
Well, the funds must be used for that purpose,
To have a 4th person.
to have 3 full-time firefighters.
You can have 3 full-time firefighters on a, in other words, you could have 3 full-time firefighters on a given shift and not have a reservist.
That's irrelevant with regard to funding.
Irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right. These funds are used to pay 3 full-time firefighters. How the chief utilizes those firefighters
Good.
is up to the chief.
Good. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So whether we have 6 or 12 firefighters, the funding is for 3 firefighters.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Are there further questions? Then let's take public comment, and then we'll come back for discussion. First up is you'll each have 3 minutes. And you can tell by looking at the timer. We'll start with Bob Putney, followed by Allison Dahlman. Welcome.
Good morning, Bob Putney, a resident of Cambria. I certainly hope at the end of this meeting today that you'll put this matter before the taxpayers of Cambria. And I hope you'll reconsider your thought about just putting this tax on occupied property. There is certainly a benefit to having 4 firefighters, 3 career and 1 reserve firefighter on an engine 24/7, as is readily discernible from what happened in Montecito and Napa, Santa Rosa. I can go on and on. Vacant lot owners, once they've had a devastating wildfire, have to do a lot of remediation in order to make sure that their property doesn't pour out into the county right away, doesn't damage an adjoining person's property. There's inspections that have to be done, compliance inspections with vacant lots. So I hope you'll understand that that staffing level allows the fire department to make a quicker and faster attack on a wildfire or even a structure fire that may move on to an adjoining vacant lot. So if the person ever wants to sell it or do anything with it, it's better if there's vegetation on it and it's managed and it hasn't been eroded away and washed downstream, as we saw a very violent version of that in Montecito and in Santa Barbara County and other counties. The last thing I wanted to say is we all need to realize that CAL FIRE is a state fire department. They have a contract with the County of San Luis Obispo, but there are no stations near us where there are county staffed fire engines, which it's confusing because CAL FIRE has a contract to staff the San Luis Obispo County fire engines. So I've heard some of my neighbors say, well, if we have CAL FIRE and they have 2 or 4, they can be the 2 out for our 2 in. That's rolling the dice. I was your fire chief for 8 years, and many times our engine was the only unit on scene, and there was no CAL FIRE cover engine, sometimes for 3 or 4 days. They respond not only well up into Monterey County, because right now they can only go as far as a landslide, but when Highway 1's open, they go all the way up to almost the middle of the Big Sur area. And they also have to cover down to Montana de Oro and all the way over to Highway 101. There's very sparse coverage out here. So I hope you will ensure our safety, and one of my concerns is our firefighters' safety, because it really limits them if they have 3 people on the engine to what they can do, how effective they can be, and how much protection they can protect us. They really are an all-risk fire department. And I hope you will consider, providing an opportunity for all taxpayers to vote on this, because I believe whether you're an improved lot owner or a vacant lot owner, there is a benefit to having a staff fire department that can protect all property. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Allison Dahlman, followed by Lori Valens. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Allison Dahlman, and I am a resident of Cambria. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better? Okay. Hi, my name is Allison Dahlman, and I'm a resident of Cambria. I heard on Monday this committee suggest that only developed parcels pay for our necessary firefighters and EMS. In order to arrive at this conclusion, one would have to believe that fire will select developed over non-developed properties, which, of course, is rubbish. Fire doesn't care, it just burns. Many of the undeveloped parcels have dead trees and tall weeds, which increase their fire risk to our whole community. When you own property in this tinderbox, you become responsible not only for reducing the fire hazards of said property, but also for paying for the benefits provided by that community. We all benefit from the responsible land management and should follow the recommendations of the fire department regarding our property. We all also benefit from a full firefighting EMS force, as again, fire is not selective. All parcels are at risk regardless of ownership. Therefore, all owners should share in providing the necessary funds to protect our community. We all know that more fires will burn in Cambria. We all know that we need firefighter and EMS expertise and bravery. Funding a force should not even be up for vote. It is just plain common sense to provide financial security for those protecting us. I do not know how or why this board delayed addressing such a vital issue until the final hour, but we are here now, and the only way forward is together. All for one, one for all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Lori Valens, followed by Mike Zarowitz.
Hi, I'm Lori Valens, longtime resident, nearly a quarter of a century. I have 2 comments and 4 questions. I'm in favor of supporting a fully staffed fire department and supporting them in all of their needs. I think the parcel tax should be equitable for improved and non-improved lots. Presumably, the response would be the same by the firefighters, whether there's a structure or not. My questions are, have you applied for any subsequent grants to fund this as the first round was funded? My second question, how much will owners of commercial properties pay? Will businesses also pay? Will businesses pay if they're renters, for instance? If businesses who are renters have to pay, then renters and visitors to hotels, shouldn't they also pay? My last question is, how will you build up a reserve in the CCSD budget so that we don't face this same question and we can continue to support our firefighters and do the great job that they've been doing for us? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll address those questions for you as soon as we're through with the public comment. I've gotten them written down. Mike, followed by William Castellanos.
I'm Mike Zarowitz, resident of Cambria. Make it quick, in favor of all the lots being assessed. You may want to consider assessing, if it's possible, on the basis of square footage of a lot. That gets rid of the problem with multi-lot owners, big lot owners, small lot owners. If there's a possibility of maybe, retrieving some of this mysterious $117 a year we pay to the state for fire suppression and fire protection. It seems like what they should be doing. And that's it. I got the record 217.
Thank you very much for your comments. William Castellanos is my final request. If you'd like to speak, please bring a speaker slip forward. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much, and good morning. My name is Bill Castellanos, and I'm a long-term resident of this community, 43 years, actually. First of all, I want to thank you for taking this initiative and actually moving so fast on this issue, the critical issue. We own property here, and we have improved lots. We have also vacant lots, and I think being fair and being equitable, I think it's important that we also pay our share. Even though you can say I'm a member of the community and I have a responsibility to all the residents. So I feel that the additional dollars that I'm going to be paying is going to not just protect me, but it's going to protect my family and the community that we have dearly loved. Just some clarification. Just need to know as to who can vote. In other words, it's on the ballot. Who will be able to vote? I'm assuming they have to be registered voters. Do they have to be residents of Cambria? That's one. And then I think some of the questions that I had dealing with the funding, I'm assuming that if it's going to be for 3 firefighters, that the funds will be only earmarked for firefighters, and that's, I think, is very good, that we don't have, that money can get lost. But I'm assuming that some of that money will be going into salaries, fringe benefits, and probably any type of cost of living in the future. So we have to look at the future. So I think when you start considering what we charge the residents, we also have to make sure that we have some type of contingency funds in there to make sure that we don't have, that we can be able to cover the firefighters, especially with any additional costs. I don't know if this money can be used for, it has to be used only for salary and fringe. Could it be used for any items that maybe the firefighters would need to have, say, like hoses and things like that? I don't know. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've gotten a couple extra requests to speak. The next one is Steve Provo, followed by Laurel Stewart. Welcome.
Thank you. Steve Provo with the Cambrian. I'm also a resident of Cambria, so it's partly as the Cambrian editor that I'm asking this question and partly as a resident. I'm just curious if you could ask staff to explain the previous estimate, which you were possibly going to vote on Monday, was $300,000. And today we're told $378,000, which is a 26% increase. And I'm curious as to how that was so far off in the first place, because if you had voted for it, it would have been severely underfunded. And so I'm just curious about that.
Thank you. We'll get you an answer to that once we're done with the public comment. Laurel Stewart is my last request to speak. Welcome.
As a land use person, I'm just, I'd like you to refer to them as parcels and not lots.
Could be a world's record in the time for comments there. I think that was 6 seconds. Thank you. And we will try to refer to them as parcels. Michael Calderwood.
Good morning. I have a quick question. Understanding that you need to hit a target amount of dollars to fund these positions, and that needs to be factored into the ballot. The conversation between improved or non-improved, or however we designate those, has there been thought given or research done on the legality and the sensibility of perhaps doing some sort of a tiered between the two different types of parcels, so that you can at least set a target that will get you to the number that you need to get to fund these positions, but do it in a more equitable way. I can constantly get hung up between the fairness between improved and unimproved parcels as far as people who pay taxes. So, question, has that been considered? Is it something that is legal, and has it been thought through? Thank you.
Okay, that was my last request to speak. Is there anyone else? Okay. We have a few questions here. I believe we did, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Hollingsworth, but I believe we did apply for a follow-up grant through SAFER, and we did not win that grant, if I'm not mistaken. Can you please speak to that issue?
Yes, Madam President. Yes, you are correct. Every once in a while, AFG does allow for the opportunity of applying for subsequent SAFER grants to fund for additional time frame. That was specifically not allowed in the notice of funding opportunity this last go-around, so that immediately took us out of contention for that. One of the things we have been able to do is that we have been extremely prudent in how we develop the SAFER funding for this cycle go-around, and then there's going to be a little bit of a surplus from what the grant was, from the original amount that we were given. And how that's going to help us, help the CCSD, and help the community is that you've already encumbered that cost for from March to June. And we're going to be able to capture some of the expenses there, so it's not going to have to come out of the general fund money because we've been able to save some funds there. So that's a really positive thing that we're able to tell you in regards to that. Somebody else also mentioned something about the state fees, the SRA fees, and I'm happy to tell you, if you haven't already heard, that those are going away if they haven't already been terminated. So that $150 fee that you were getting from the state that was issued from CAL FIRE no longer exists. And that was used to fund CAL FIRE personnel, equipment, extensive grants throughout the state, and likewise. And all of the offset of that is going to be captured through new cap and trade organization at the state level. So the influx of that is going to be significant. So all the fire safe grants that we go for are going to be coming out of cap and trade funds now, as opposed to those SRA fees. So that specific $150 fee that you see on your taxes is going to go away, if you haven't already seen that.
Thank you.
Okay.
There was a question, commercial properties, so parcels that we count as commercial are included?
Yes, commercial parcels, residential parcels, if they're improved, then they're going to be taxed at the same rate, and if they're unimproved, they'll all be taxed.
Okay. And can we build a reserve was one of the questions, so that we're covered on that.
We don't have a reserve built into this tax, but if in fact there is funds accumulating, they'll be held in reserve for this specific purpose. And Rudy could probably expand on that.
I have to agree with Tim's response, okay? And one of the new features that you'll see in the new budget that you'll get soon for the upcoming year, 18-19, is that the budget will have a summary, like I'm going to call it fund balance summary. In that particular section, it'll be broken down by reserves. For example, if we were to start this new tax, and let's say we collect, say, $300,000 or whatever, okay? And let's say we only spend $280,000. Well, there's $20,000 that was unspent. Well, that $20,000 will go into a specific reserve that will be transparent to our board and our public. So that's the kind of budget you'll be getting very shortly.
And it would be restricted to paying for the benefits and the salaries for firefighter.
Yes.
So who can vote? Residents only? Who are the voters in this, on this June 5th measure?
Only registered voters, but registered voters have to be residents, so it's a circular question.
Okay, so it has to, so you have to be a registered voter in Cambria to vote on this. And then there was a question about improved or not improved, and that's one of the parts of the discussion that we're going to have today with the board. But can you explain the change in the estimate for the amount?
You mean the reserves? I mean,
on the amount from 300 from Monday, which was 300,000, and now it's 370.
Yes, I believe it was Tuesday morning. Staff got together and did a very, I'm going to say, a thorough and realistic analysis. Okay, and the question we ask ourselves, is that really sufficient? I mean, we looked at the salary we call tables, step A, B, C, and so forth. Okay. And we wanted to be realistic and conservative. Our plan was to be realistic and say, if it's going to cost this much money, let's put enough money now rather than later on. Good example is the $300,000, in my opinion, what I got to see is that, yeah, it would cover steps maybe A and B, but it was not going to cover D, E, and F. So then when a year or two later, staff can come before the board and say, oh, yeah, you know, we asked you a couple of years ago to approve a ballot measure for $300,000, but it's not enough to fund these 3 firefighters at step D, E, and F. Okay, and we don't want to put our public and the board before that. So we don't want to come back and say, well, now because of the situation, we need to come back and either ask the board to approve another ballot measure or take it from the general fund. That was our plan.
Okay, so the increase was based on making sure we had a more realistic number, basically.
Yes, otherwise, I could see the staff asking the board in the future, well, we're short 40,000 or 50,000, so our recommendation is take it from the general fund reserves. And we don't want to put the board in that position.
Vice President Berenger.
I understood that you were using an average in the past, and now you're using the most. Is that correct?
That's correct, Director.
Okay, so as instead of saying the lowest, you never even considered the lowest fee. You started with an average last time, which I thought was reasonable, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're starting with the most.
Yes, yes.
So if we start building reserves, then the only place we can spend it, and it's going to be easy, I'm just saying, for the firefighters to want to get more and more raises. I'm just saying, and we're going to be building up this reserve, and it's going to be indefensible for us to not do that. And I thought an average was a reasonable way, but now if you want to take the most, it's another twist to the story.
Well, on that point, I think having the highest level, since the adjustment is only CPI, and the past contract with the firefighters that we just had, the increases that they had year over year in that contract were more than the CPI. So the CPI may not keep up with the pay increases that the board in the future may decide to do. So having this be at a higher level also prevents us from getting into a situation where we've negotiated a certain level of raise, but it's more than the CPI, so the money coming in is not quite enough. Director Pearson.
Adding on to that, there's also different steps that firefighters can get to, and also they could qualify as EMTs, which puts them in a different scale also, and that probably will happen with those firefighters, so that we'll end up with all 3 of them being EMTs at some point in time. And the other factor that was in the highest versus the lowest and the middle was whether those people were married or not, because if they're married, their health care costs a lot more than if they are single. So we've taken it that they're all married and they're all EMTs, which in 5 years is probably going to happen, okay?
You had one more question. Somebody asked about did we do an analysis on a lower number for unimproved parcels and a higher number under more improved parcels? But I think the direction the staff gave you is not to do too much calculus, and or the board gave you direction not to do that because we only had a few days. Is that correct?
In the original discussion, I think staff made it clear that you can make a distinction in what you assess an improved parcel versus an unimproved parcel, and the board essentially chose not to go in that direction, but it's legal to do so.
Thank you, Vice President Berenger. Director Pearson?
I refer again to the information we had in December. There is an existing parcel tax collected for fire department, and that is tiered. It is tiered considerably. Vacant lot pays $18, single-family resident $90, single-family resident above 3,600 square feet pays $135. Commercial range is from $271 all the way up to $2,309. So we already have some tiering done on that tax, and so my feeling is we wouldn't necessarily have to do it on this tax.
Director Wharton.
I just kind of have a suggestion over the whole thing here is we've gotten a lot of great comments and suggestions from the public, from ourselves here on the board, that next time that if we accept a grant that has a date of expiration, let's not wait till December to start opening the conversation, because we've had a lot of good ideas come forth that we might be able to suggest, or we could have fleshed out in greater detail. My biggest fear from Monday was that we were going to get paralysis by analysis and miss this date altogether. So if a grant, and this isn't a stab at anybody, it's just, we knew the date. Let's just get, next time we do this, let's start this conversation a little bit earlier. Then we could even have budget contingencies put in place. Yeah, that's just my suggestion on it. And I'm enjoying listening to what the public has in the conversation here on the board. It's informative.
And as a result of the SAFER grant being awarded and having this situation come up, we did put a policy in place relating to grants coming through the board so that we'd have even more lead time to know whether we were going to be facing something like this. Vice President Behringer.
I just want to make a comment. The number one driving force behind this particular thing is to keep 3 full-time firefighters on the engine, and the people that are benefiting for that is the 2 in, 2 out structure fire. And so this is really a structure fire support program. It can only be used for an additional firefighter. It has nothing to do with cleaning out a brush on an empty lot. It has nothing to do with a paramedic medical rescue. It has no benefit to, added benefit to a tourist, no added benefit to a restaurant, no added benefit to anybody other than a structure fire. And that's the primary focus. That's one of the reasons why I thought it's most appropriate. You know, fire sees no, it doesn't determine whether there's a house there or not, but the primary beneficiary is someone that has a structure fire. And that's why I thought it was most important to be used for improved parcels. The other logic there is that the number of improved parcels will increase, whereas the number of unimproved parcels will decrease over time. As parcels are retired in the build-out reduction program, you're going to lose more and more of this money. You will no longer get your $80 from that parcel because it won't be taxed, whereas an improved parcel will be taxed, and the additional, if someone improves a parcel, more tax will come in. So the lodge, and I think it's more likely to pass if it's improved parcels, because people with unimproved parcels may not want to vote for it. So perhaps the chief can explain.
Yes, Vice President Behringer, if it's possible, I would like to have the opportunity just to address a couple of things you said. You are absolutely right. The purpose of this is to fund 3 additional firefighters to bring us to that 4 level all the time. Just as a reminder for everybody, that means we have a full-time captain, full-time engineer, this hopeful now full-time firefighter instead of the SAFER firefighter, all 3 career positions, and our 4th position is a reserve, just to make sure we're all on the same page. The only caveat to what you said that I just wanted to clarify is that we are an all-hazard department. So as you know, less than 10% of what we do is actual respond to fires. That's this progression of emergency services. The most verifiable and justifiable numbers that are quantified through NFPA 1710 and 1201 that talk about how we measure and evaluate what we do, the best way to do that is to evaluate fires, because those are the safety components, the all risk, the risk assessment, the most and fundamentally dangerous to us and the community. And that's why I can give you verifiable, quantifiable numbers that say overall it's going to save you 26% time, it's going to increase your response time to task, it's going to shorten your overall task time. Those are the things that we measure because it's very easy to do. The reason I put all the other statistics in the report monthly is to show you all of the other things that we do too. We run 60% of our calls plus our medical aids. We run vehicle accidents every month, ocean rescue, cliffside rescue, public assist. We go out every day helping people in and out of their homes. Not everybody knows that, just because they can't get out of their home to go to their doctor's office. We respond almost every other day on a regular basis to change people's smoke detector batteries because this is an elderly community and they just can't get there. So I don't want to at all become this to seem contentious in any way, but to say that it's only for structural firefighting, I think is slightly misleading. And I just wanted to possibly offer the clarification that, yes, it is for solely that third person, absolutely. But when that third person is on duty, it is an all-hazard department. And that might mean that they're responding to only medical issues that day. It might mean that they're going to train up to be a paramedic a few years down the road. It might mean that they're committed and told that they have to go do hydrant maintenance and special projects that day. It might mean that they're doing weed abatement for those unimproved parcels. We can't focus just on one component of what it is they do on a daily basis that are required through our DOT regulations and federal training regulations and all the other things that we have to do on a daily basis. So I apologize if focusing on the quantifiable, verifiable numbers through NFPA to measure what we do on a structure fire has misled anybody, because that was never the intention. It was solely to give you more information and background to understand what the benefits are to having that extra person. But we've also talked ad nauseum about all of the other things they're doing, and all of those other things are probably 90% of the job. Does that make sense? And so I absolutely agree with you that it has to be for those three people, and that's absolutely correct. But we have to remember that once that person's on duty, what our safer people are doing right now are all of these other 90% of the things we're talking about. We're solely at this point talking about a funding mechanism to keep those people on staff. So I hope that's offered a little bit of clarification.
Thank you, Chief Hollins. Thank you, Chief Hollingsworth. And the 90% of the other things that we do in responding to emergency services that aren't emergencies, by the general understanding of what an emergency situation is versus changing batteries in a smoke detector, which is truly important. Those things are whether we should or should not be providing those things. There's certain services we are providing, and I think that the chief makes a good point that it helps for the safety when you're talking structure fire, but it also allows us to maybe even do something like have somebody that's a specialist being a forester, for example. Maybe an ecology specialist or something. There's a lot of different ways that we can be utilizing staff that we have on the fire department that can even provide them some additional pay benefits if we do have somebody that's a specialist in that way. So I'm fully inclined to allow the voters to look at this. The decision we have today is whether we go with all parcels or only the improved parcels. The special fire benefit assessment is a different thing. This is a parcel tax, and that's a separate entity kind of thing. There's a different. Can you please speak to that just a little bit?
That's correct. That's technically that's an assessment that predated Prop 218, so it can't increase. This is a tax. I mean, they both raise revenue for fire purposes, but they are fundamentally different.
Could we divide out? I'm not saying that I want to go further because I know we're up against a tight deadline here, but we already have the list of improved and unimproved and commercial and what we charge them for that assessment. Could we use a similar? Just go here. You're an unimproved on the fire benefit assessment, so we stick you in that category for this other parcel tax, or no? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I think so. They're all going to be paying the same amount of money internally.
Okay.
It's all going to go into a single account. How we go about allocating it beyond then is really an internal matter, so I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
I was thinking about having different amounts charged to the different, like the way that it is with the assessment.
Again, we could do that legally. It's not set up that way today.
Right.
We could continue this meeting.
Well, I don't, and again, I know we're up against a tight deadline, and I don't know how much would be involved, but I would assume since we already have that set up on the tax rolls, that it wouldn't be a hugely complicated calculus, would it? I mean, I honestly don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Because it involves math, I defer to Rudy.
That's fair.
That's honest. I think it can be done. I don't know how long it would take
Okay.
to actually break it down, so.
Especially because it has to be divided out and whatever for the amount.
My only response to what the question is yes, I agree with Tim, it can be done, but how long it would take is
Okay.
the unknown right now.
Okay. And this is in perpetuity, which is part of where my hesitation comes in, because it's the fire benefit assessment doesn't ever go up, and we continue to collect that, but it doesn't pay for what they imagined it would pay for when they put it in place, is my guess, since it was supposed to cover a certain amount of something in order to get it on the ballot. Was it on the ballot, or we just did it at the board level?
No,
Because
it
was
went through
prior to Prop
it went through
218.
the assessment process.
Okay.
Where you
Okay.
segregate out special and general benefits, and then it was
Okay.
determined.
Okay, so it did go through a full public process.
Yes, it did.
Okay. Vice President Behringer.
Maybe I'm making a final plea, in a way, is that if you don't want to be back in the same position 5 years from now because we undercollected, because we did every parcel and we're losing parcels and we're gaining improved parcels, I think the logic is that it'll be more sustainable. You could have virtually a third of this tax gone if those parcels were to be given, to a land conservancy or whatever. So, hey, I wonder, if that parcel were given to a land conservancy, the tax on that would probably continue, wouldn't it? I'm wondering, what's the thought there?
Yeah, I don't think a land conservancy is exempt.
Right.
It doesn't fall into the exemptions.
But we take over the properties.
Normally, we're the ones that take that property over, but it may be a change in policy at some point in time.
But if we take the parcel, take it over, it wouldn't be taxed because
That's correct.
we're exempt.
That's correct.
So there will be a group of parcels, hundreds of parcels, that will no longer be getting that tax if we make it all parcels. If we made it only improved parcels, the tax amount would go up. I can't see why Mr. Hollingsworth isn't hoping for only improved parcels, but I could go either way. I'd like to get opinions from other directors to see if I'm a crazy person or not. Well, I'm a crazy person, but...
Director Wharton.
Well, if, in my neighborhood, we have a very large open lot that goes right up against our fence, and the grass is, up to our calves right now. And it gets taller and it just gets browner as the summer moves on. And there's a couple trees, every time the wind blows, I go out and I stare at them, make sure that they're not going to fall. And if a tree were to catch if this grass in the field were to catch an errant spark, and the tree goes up, falls on our house, it's an unimproved lot that possibly caused a fire on my lot. And it's a circular argument. You can say, but that's just where I see people are arguing is there's fire knows no bounds. It's not going to say, oh, well, here's an unimproved lot. I'm going to go to the house and burn that down. It's just going to go through a neighborhood regardless of where it is. And I could even argue that a home with defensible safe is safer than an unimproved lot, but the unimproved lot hasn't contributed anything to the safety of the community. And he's getting the benefit of it. That's just...
Director Pearson. I'm sorry, were you done?
I'd like to assuage your fears a little bit on the lots.
Parcels.
Parcels, pardon me. pardon me. We're using the max instead of the average now. I think means that for the first couple of years, we're going to have a reserve that comes back, okay? So maybe we have 5, 6 years with the first 3 years paying for the second 3 years and the reserve, and then we're quote unquote running out of money. But I think at that point in time, the fire department budget will have changed. The fire truck will be paid for by that time. So there's an extra $135,000 that we wouldn't need necessarily. Now, yes, do we want to start a fund for the next fire truck? Of course we do, but maybe we don't need $135,000. But I think that is a hard look at the fire department budget in the long term and makes more sense. And I agree with Director Wharton that, you know, the fire that starts on the unimproved lot, unimproved parcel, affects all of us at the same rate. So,
And I think that charging parcels, all parcels, and not just improved parcels, has an additional benefit for some other policies this district has. For example, if I own 2 parcels, there's 2 parcels underlying my house. If I merge them, then I'm only paying 1, so it's an incentive for people to merge lots, which is part of our policies for build-out reduction and to limit the amount of demand on our water and wastewater systems.
Right, which will reduce the amount of tax that we're collecting.
Right.
But, you know,
it's a conundrum, but I don't think without calculus, I don't think we can do anything other than
I
that.
only have 1 parcel. I'd rather have it be all parcels because it's cheaper for me. But it defies logic. And your argument is interesting, as Director Wharton's, but we can only use this money for these firefighters. It won't buy an extra hose. It won't help pay for it's not part of the budget in a way. It's part of the budget only for 3 firefighters. So, but I'm feeling a consensus that we're looking at all parcels.
Quick question. I have a question.
But maybe there's more
Director
discussion.
Wharton has a question.
Question for legal over there, Tim. All right, we're cruising along, we're collecting this parcel tax, and we're doing well. We're retiring lots, and we're merging lots, and we're improving lots as well. But we still see that we're maybe coming up a little bit short. Is there a repeal of this and replace it with another thing if we see down the road that we're not quite getting the funds that we need?
You would always have the ability to go back to the voters and seek additional revenues.
I mean, would we be able to like repeal this resolution and then put one in its place?
They would, we wouldn't. It could only be repealed by the
Correct,
voters.
yeah, that's, but we could put that forth to, okay, so
Yes.
if we see that we are retiring lots, maybe 10, 15 years down the road, and we're improving lots that we can, parcels, I'm sorry.
And I'm conflicted because I agree with your logic relating to why only the improved ones, because it does increase the number of folks that would be paying. But I also think that because it serves the policy, some other policies that we have to do that all parcels, whether they're improved or not. I did get a question from the audience that I'd like to make sure we address, which is why is the CCSD not taxed on its properties? Can you address that, please, Mr. Carmel?
Federal, state, and local governmental entities aren't subject to taxation in this form of taxation.
Thank you. So for example, the school wouldn't be paying.
School district, county property, federal property.
All right.
All of them would be exempt. They'd have to go through an exemption process. Rudy will develop a form, they'll apply for the exemption, and then they'll be exempt. Okay.
Thank you. Vice President Berenger?
And the logic would be, if we paid the tax, we're just getting our own tax. I mean,
We're paying ourselves.
we're paying ourselves. It's just costing us, it comes out of somebody's budget, so it doesn't make sense.
All right. So we need a motion, and the decision is whether all parcels or only improved parcels. Is that correct, Mr. Carmel?
That's correct. You have two sets of resolutions. The first resolution only it deals with all real property, and the second one deals with improved real property. So in your agenda packet, if you read the title of the resolution that says a special tax on real property located within the district, that applies to all parcels.
So the first one is the one for all parcels?
It sounds like it.
Okay. I would entertain a motion. Director Wharton?
To go back to the why don't we pay the tax, I just wanted the quick numbers that all parcels, it would be about $12,000 a year that the CCSD would owe. And I would also make a motion to vote on the all parcels proposal before us.
Is there a second?
Second.
So the motion is to levy a special tax on real property located within the district to fund 3 full-time firefighters, Resolution 3-2018. The motion was made by Director Wharton and seconded by Director Pearson. I think is there any further discussion? I think we can have a roll call vote. Ms. Madrid?
Director Wharton?
Aye.
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Director Berenger?
It's a personal benefit to me, isn't it, if I do this? Do I have to recuse myself? Because it's cheaper for me if this is the way we go.
It's got the same effect on the public generally.
Aye.
President Rice?
Aye. The motion passes 4-0. This will be put to the June ballot. We also need to make a decision about the argument in favor of and how we're going to handle doing that. Mr. Carmelo made a few suggestions. I don't have any particular preference in my, Director Wharton?
Director Pearson and we voted yes for this, and we're both in agreement on that. We're basically in the fire safety healthcare.
You're doing the Emergency Services Committee.
Maybe we could sit down with someone from the fire department to put forth an argument. Director Pearson, is that amenable
Is that
to you, or-
agreeable? Do we need to have a vote, or can we do consensus that it goes that way?
The consensus is fine.
Okay.
And I
Chief
did,
Hollingsworth?
And have it reviewed by Mr. Carmel?
well, it's going to have to come back, remember, it's going to have to come back to the meeting on the 22nd, so you
Okay.
have to get on it pretty quickly.
Ms. Madrid, can we make sure that that's added to the agenda for the 22nd?
And then I did hand out the county's regulations with regard to it, so abide by those rules because they're very strict.
Thank you.
And I'm assuming that the fire department staff has been briefed on what they're allowed to do and not do when they're in uniform as well?
We'll make sure that the
Okay.
chief gets the materials that are needed to
Okay.
inform them of the parameters of their support.
And I hope that the community recognizes there's a fairly strong consensus up here that this is a positive thing, so.
The fire department, they can advocate off-duty on their own time at public events or like at farmers markets or anything? As long as it's on their own time, or?
Members of the fire department, on their own personal time, have, you know.
But not in uniform?
Not in uniform, well,
Not
we'll
on-
go through that, but
Right,
there,
okay.
Chief Hollingsworth?
If I could be so bold as just to approach very quickly, and I want to offer my heartfelt appreciation for your decision today. I do think it's the correct way to move forward for the community. That's eliminating my bias. I hope you can understand that. This is for the safety of the community as a whole. I have been in contact with legal counsel, and we do have an extensive set of guidelines that I've already passed along to the crews to hopefully assuage any of your concerns. They're very well aware of what their limitations are in regards to it has to be completely removed from anything in reference to the fire department itself. That's a little bit hard for the community to maybe understand sometimes, but please understand when they are out there, they're representing Local 4635, not the fire department, not me, not the CCSD. So they do have a vested interest because of their position, and but it also is based on the fact of trying to get that additional safety. Also, District Council has given me the full set of guidelines for the parameters for the notice that needs to be going in, and I would be very happy to work with whoever's going to be doing that. I understand the expediency there, and we can get it finalized within this next week and put it on for your consideration for the next meeting.
Wonderful, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I hope you guys come out when we need new folks for the collection system, too. Public health is important. I'm sorry, I don't want my sewer collection system to be breaking down and not have enough people on it. May not be a fire, but it happens more frequently than a fire.
Or the wastewater going into the creek.
Oh, yes, which was expensive. All right, I think that concludes our business for today. We are adjourned. Thank you for coming out.